I love the smell of podcasts in the morning. Hello and welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Casey. Joined with me, as always, is Brian Mensing. Brian, how the hell are you?
It's this afternoon, so your quote's already busted.
That's what I woke up with. I woke up with the smell of podcasts in the air. This is my second of the day. I'm going to be running on the time frame of all versions of Apocalypse Now by the end of the day, just recording podcasts. This is how I torture myself, and our guest tortured himself by watching every version of this damn movie Apocalypse Now, returning to the show because, Corey, we only have you on when there is 3 versions of certain movies. Yeah.
Well, the next one will be like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Or Blade Runner.
Yeah. We can, and I'm sure that there are multiple cuts of other movies that we can do Kingdom of Heaven because that's fun. We'll
wait for Zack Snyder to release one more, and then we'll have to bring Corey back for the Zack Snyder cut of the Snyder Cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to see. I still have not watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't have the 4 hours to put into that.
You just put like 9 into Apocalypse Now.
Well, yes, because that's a movie that I like. I didn't like Justice League, and I think that Zack Snyder is a pretty good director, I guess, but I don't want to put over 4 hours into watching one of his movies.
Corey, you saw the version. It was the 2-hour version that came out in 2017. It's just a little darker this time.
Okay. Yep.
Anyway, Corey,
more cyborg stuff, but
there is a little bit more of that. Corey, how are you? It's been a while since we had you on. What was the last movie we had you on for?
I think Nightbreed.
Was it Nightbreed?
I think it was Nightbreed. But I was saying the last time we had him on was when he was in the background of Loose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He snuck in. Cameos.
Yep.
Cameo style.
Ben since October. Damn, Ben far too long. We're glad to have you back. I always love talking to you because
glad to be back.
You are one of the brightest minds and that I know with movies and life. And me and Brian for sure need that in our podcast.
One of the brightest, one of the darkest, all at the same time.
Yeah, we need an expert on this one because we're tackling one of the biggest movies to tackle, I think, in Apocalypse Now because of how many different versions, how much behind the scenes there is on this movie, how much came up after this movie was released, and we'll get into that in the second half. But should we jump into the box office numbers for this week? I mean, they're not too different from what we talked about last week, Brian, but there is a little bit of a change in the box office, not really by much though. Let's jump into it. Number one, really the only change this week is Godzilla vs. Kong went to $7.71 million at number one. It was at 13 and it dropped to 7. Everything else is within a few $1,000s of what they were at last week.
And what I'm remembering though is that for the sake of a number one movie, its percentages are right on par though. It was like around 40, 44%, 45%
with a normal release. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So maybe we're going to start hopefully seeing more of the quote unquote normal releases.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, yeah. And I like Godzilla vs. Kong. I thought it was a fun little movie. I don't know if I would rush to watch it again, even though I did subscribe to HBO Max. It's weird. I subscribe to HBO Max, really have not watched a lot of the stuff that people subscribe to HBO Max for. I have not seen a movie that is coming up in the top 5. I have not. I've only seen Godzilla vs. Kong. I haven't watched Justice League, as I mentioned. So, yeah. I'm really getting my $15 worth on my HBO Max subscription. I watched the Way Back. I watched that movie, and I watched a CNN documentary about the Kennedys.
Wow! So you got your $15 worth with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you're once you start diving down the rabbit hole that is HBO Max, I think you'll find a good plethora of things to make it worth your money's worth.
Well, they have a decent Turner Classic Movies section there,
yes.
So that might be the price of admission right there.
And I've noticed a lot of the Criterion Channel stuff is crossing over with HBO Max, so there's a lot of that on HBO Max too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that I just broke down because it wasn't too terribly expensive and ended up getting the Criterion Channel, but then realized that the PS4 does not have the app, so I pretty much have to stream it from my phone to the TV.
Yeah, I have that with Peacock. Peacock is only available on one TV in my house and no other console.
Oh, lovely.
Stupid Peacock. It's a cock.
Yeah.
It's available on my Xbox, but hey,
Peacock sucks. Let's move on through the box office. We'll shimmy on through these pretty fast. Like I said, there's not much of a change from last week. Number 2, Nobody, 2.52, which is very. I think it might have been this last week, 2.5 million, right around there.
Did you update the numbers?
No, I updated them. I'm like, but I don't know if Nobody changed really that much. It was pretty much the same here at number 2. Number 3, The Unholy. This one only dropped a few $1,000. Is all a little over $2 million. I was talking with Blake and Sam on Slashlot about seeing another horror movie in the theater because it's been over a year since I've seen a new horror movie in the theater. I'm like itching to watch any horror movie. I might have to go watch this, even though I've heard it's not great.
Yeah, well, you know,
you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta take one for the team.
I think I might have to.
There's not quite a horror film, but the state's going to be showing Eraserhead.
I know
next weekend.
I know.
Kind of a horror film that you can see on the big screen.
That's that's on my. I need to schmooze the fiance to go watch Eraserhead in the theater. One that I think has very similar thematic elements to that is Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon.
Oh, of course.
Does it? Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah.
$1.9 million. I think it was just over 2 last weekend. So again, not dropping very much here for that. And the number 5, Tom and Jerry.
Jerry and Tom going strong.
$1 million. Still hanging around at least for a little while until another kids movie comes out.
Oh yeah, Mortal Kombat.
Why not?
Is Tom and Jerry good?
What?
Is it a good movie?
It's for me. I'd say it's pretty middle of the road. I mean, it's cute, but it's not like. And for the sake of the CGI part of it here, I think they did a really good job. But it's not like anybody's going to win any awards on the technical or on the acting side of things.
Right. Chloe Grace Moretz is in that, right?
Correct. And Michael Pena. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I think what it is the reason it's staying at like above $1 million in the top 5 is that a lot of theaters aren't carrying Raya and the Last Dragon. So kids only have Tom and Jerry as their option to go watch a movie if they want to see a movie in the theater right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Which sucks. But I think within the next couple of weeks when you get some new stuff coming out and over the summer, it'll change. But hopefully, I mean, I'm assuming more kids stuff will start coming out pretty soon. Kids movies are doing pretty well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's nice to get kids out of the house, and I understand they're back in school and everything. But yeah, it's good to get people. They can let the kids go to the movie and stay with them, but still not kind of just zone out and have their kids be entertained and not at home.
You can take your kids to Eraserhead if you want to get them out for a little while. I think that's a great family feature.
It's a great film about the joy of parenting.
As all Cronenberg movies are.
Yeah.
Father or son.
Yeah.
Boy, you make me really want to jump on and watch that one.
Oh, Lynch, yes.
Yeah. No, that's all right.
All right. Should we go to the news for this week? Not a whole lot.
Our little itty bitty bit on like what's going on with the news lately? It's like there's a pandemic going on. Nobody wants to release any news going.
Everybody's just sitting on their movies from last year. They're like, all right, we'll wait to announce stuff until we get these damn movies out.
Right. So yeah, first thing we have here is Mr. Pete Davidson is set to co-write and star as Joey Ramone in the biopic of I Slept with Joey Ramone. Now, I thought that the Ramone stuff that was going on is he was playing the brother, or I'm confused.
So I had to look this up because that's how I read it when I first saw this article too.
Yeah,
but it's just based on the book, the book I Slept with Joey Ramone, which is written by Joey Ramone's brother.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But in the film, it sounds like Pete Davidson is in fact playing Joey Ramone for the movie version.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'll say this thing. At least they got a native New Yorker. So I don't know. I like me. I like me some Pete Davidson. But
I'm curious on Corey's thoughts on Pete Davidson. I'm not in the camp yet. I'm still waiting for him to finally okay, I get Pete Davidson now.
I there are things that I've liked from SNL that I've seen Pete Davidson do. I have not seen The King of Staten Island yet. I own it.
It's good.
It's in my watch list. Local Lou has recommended it while saying that it's way too long, much like every Judd Apatow movie.
Yeah.
Taking a look at his face, he has some characteristics of Joey Ramone, but Joey Ramone was kind of a homely man.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if he, because Joey Ramone didn't. He was a great performer, but not much of a talker. He would speak, but it was always kind of in short sense. I just don't know if this will work. But if it's a passion project for Pete Davidson, which seriously, if he's co-writing it, it's somewhat of a passion project.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need someone to look exactly like the person. I would much prefer that the performance be there. Despite my problems with the movie, I actually really like the movie Nixon, and Anthony Hopkins looks nothing like Richard Nixon, but it's a fantastic performance.
Right.
Despite the Academy Award, a certain someone was in a movie about Ray Charles, and I think that is an SNL performance. It's a mimicry, and I don't think it's a good performance. But he looks an awful lot like Ray Charles in that movie. So we'll see. We'll see.
I'm not expecting a full transformation from Pete Davidson in this. I'm expecting a lot of Pete Davidson isms will be put into Joey Ramone, which I don't know if like Corey said, I don't know if that's going to totally work. I'm interested though. I'm very interested to see what he does with this because with that SNL background of his writing abilities, like he did that Eminem sketch earlier this year, which I think is my favorite thing Pete Davidson has done. The Stan song to Santa Claus.
Right.
I thought that was incredible. I thought that was a great way to use Pete Davidson, and I love the Ramones. I would love to see more Ramones stuff, and I'm glad this is probably going to be the closest we're going to get to a big screen Ramones biopic. I hope it's better than the Motley Crue one that Netflix gave us a few years ago. That was horrible,
that was atrocious.
I don't know.
It was a complete and utter waste of time. I apologize to people that liked it, but whatever.
There's a lot of people that like it. It's a horrible movie.
I'm glad I passed on that one.
The dirt is dirt.
I will say this. It is a movie that lets you in on what the movie is within the first 5 minutes. Yeah. So it's like, oh, you're not going to do a deep dive here. You're going to be oozing, liquid. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
You're a lifetime
bodily fluids.
You're a Lifetime Channel movie oozing body. Yeah.
I hope it's good. I hope it's good. I mean, I don't go into anything expecting it to be bad. I want to be entertained, and so even stuff that I have not liked, I want to be entertained by it. It just so happens that sometimes I don't.
Yeah. And that's honestly, it's one of the things that I do go into any kind of movie is that, unless you are deliberately and purposely trying to make a bad movie, people don't go out to try to make bad movies.
No. And when they do, they fail.
Right.
The great bad movies were made with a bunch of heart, and they thought they were making a great film. Kind of going back to the first episode of the podcast that I was featured on. They don't go into it expecting to make the worst thing ever or something that someone will laugh at. They want to make something great, and they just don't have the ability to do so. Hopefully these guys do, because I love the Ramones, and the days of early punk haven't really been covered very well with Hollywood films. I mean, you have stuff like The Decline of Western Civilization, but that also
what about the CBGB movie?
Oh, the CBGB movie is kind of bad. It's kind of bad.
I'm hoping this has a really low budget to it. Is what I'm hoping.
Yeah,
make it really kind of like gritty and yeah. Which I think which plays very well into being the fact we're talking about the Ramones, because you're like Corey said, we're talking about like part of the birth of punk rock music out of New York and stuff like that. A low budget would work beautifully for this, as long as they don't over glamorize it.
Right.
Which I
think
get
Milos Forman in there. Get Milos Forman to direct it. It'll be fine.
I like it.
He seems to do very well with biopics. So
I don't think there's a director attached. I looked that up quick. So there's no one attached right now to direct this. I think that's even bigger than Pete Davidson is who's directing him in this movie.
Pete Davidson comes on to direct.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think we have a different conversation if Pete Davidson's directing.
Yes.
All right, so on to the next thing. I actually had to look this up because I was just like, this is totally something that's up Casey's wheelhouse here. Chris McKay to replace Dexter Fletcher as the director of Universal's Renfield spinoff. I literally had to Google Renfield because I was like, I'm not even quite sure what this is. I didn't even realize this is a Dracula thing.
Mm-hmm. The blood is the life. The blood is the life.
The blood is the life.
One of the greatest laughs ever in the original Lugosi Dracula. It's so creepy.
Are we hoping for more of the dark universe that Universal is attempting to try to?
So we talked about this before, because we talked about it when Dexter Fletcher signed on to do this movie. I think it might have been last year when Invisible Man was coming out. I think it was the time frame.
That just goes to show how much I pay attention to the Universal monsters, because they seem to fuck it up all the time.
Oh yeah, they seem to like, we have the monsters. Let's do everything with them. We have Dracula in this movie, and he has to be in this movie, and he's going to be in this Monster Mash Paul Feig movie, and he's going to be over here, and this guy's going to be there. It's like, just figure out what you're doing, because I don't know if unless this Renfield movie is like just telling Dracula's story through the eyes of Renfield. I think that can be really interesting if you're telling Dracula through that eyes, because at least we're getting a different version of the Dracula story. It's not the Bram Stoker's Dracula or Lugosi's Dracula. Maybe it's a different way of doing it. I don't know. I'm on the fence on this movie.
I really hope that it's not like a Robin Hood situation, the Russell Crowe Robin Hood, where it's just kind of about his life before he became Robin Hood, and then at the end it's like, oh yeah, and then he became the Avenger known as Robin Hood. Well, yeah, that's the movie I want to see. I don't want to see what he was like outside of that. Like, he's not interesting. And Renfield, I don't need to know about his childhood. I don't need to know about Renfield's childhood. I don't need to know about his spouse, if he has one, how he came to know Count Dracula. I mean, maybe that a little bit, but I mean, if you're just doing a movie of his perspective, he's in an insane asylum through the majority of the book. So, who knows? I hope it's good.
Chris McKay, I had to look up his filmography. I was not familiar with his name. He directed the Lego Batman movie. He's attached to quite a bit of projects. He's doing the sequel to Lego Batman. He's attached to a Nightwing movie as well, it looks like.
I was gonna say, I thought he was kind of deep into the Warner Brothers lot for a while there.
His latest thing coming out, it looks like later this year, is the Tomorrow War with he has Chris Pratt in it, J.K. Simmons in that movie, like a futuristic action movie is what that looks like. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what if they come out with like this is what the Renfield story is going to be about. Then maybe I can get on board. I don't know. I'm on the fence right now.
Well, every time that they introduce something like this, or they announce something like this, I would actually like to have some sort of synopsis, just because with the announcement, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to get me excited? Because they're not, because they're just announcing that, oh, it exists, and here's the guy that's replacing another guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm completely, I agree with you because, we're in this really weird thing of, we want to get the feelers out for these kinds of movies before we actually start writing these movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't even know what this is about. We know we just want to do this. Let's see how does the public respond to attaching this name to this? Oh, that's bad. Okay, maybe we'll dial back. We'll find somebody else. And okay, now we got this name attached to it. What do you guys think now? Okay, now let's finding our writer. Let's start putting it together.
Right.
And it's like, our fans really, I mean, we're talking about, I guess there is some sort of buzz around this and the fact that we are talking about it, but it's like, this is like the fourth or fifth most important character in the Dracula story in any version of the movies or novel. Like, but I guess it's still something to talk about with Universal,
well, exactly.
Especially that it's attached to Universal and the legacy of their Dracula movies, I think is why there is buzz around this. And with Invisible Man being, what it was, being one of the best horror movies of last year and kind of revitalizing what people believe Universal can do with their monsters after Tom Cruise's The Mummy.
Yeah.
Maybe something will spark out of this. I don't know.
I don't know. To me, if they really wanted to, and I understand it's probably really difficult to tie this dude down, and I don't even know if he'd be interested in it, but I mean, get somebody that would have a passion for stuff like that, like Guillermo del Toro. Get him to spearhead all of these movies because he loves those movies. And I mean, hell, Shape of Water is basically kind of the Creature from the Black Lagoon to a certain extent.
It's a remake of Creature of the Black Lagoon. It's pretty much the same movie.
No, I agree. I think that's one of the things that a lot of these studios are lacking, and I think not to continue to stay on the MCU train, but the through line is they got the one guy who's helped keeping the
Kevin,
the ship. They've got Feige to keep it in a certain line and whatnot. And they have that one person to help keep the through line. It's like, if you want to build these universes and whatnot, like you said, like Del Toro, I think would be perfect for Universal because you're absolutely correct. Like if there's anybody in modern cinema right now that is like the guy for like movie monsters, you are absolutely correct. Like Del Toro would be the one to be like, hand the keys to the kingdom and go make us our movies, because you're absolutely correct. And I think that's one thing I think Universal keeps lacking in all this is they're like, we're not sure what we want to do. We know we want to do all this stuff, but we keep haphazarding. And because they got 19,000 hands in the pot, it's like, just give the keys to the kingdom to the right guy.
Right.
And let him make the movies.
Well, I think the right guy is already in their pocket and they should keep using him. Just use Lee Winnell to build this universe. He has built two of the biggest horror franchises the last 20 years. Just let him do it again. He is attached to another one. I don't remember which monster he's attached to doing next. He's attached to someone. I know James Wan is attached to Frankenstein, I think, or maybe Dracula too. I don't know. He's attached to one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So let those two guys kind of carve a path and fit in directors that they think will fit within this universe.
Yeah, I just don't.
Wolfman.
Yeah. Wolfman was an. Did you see the Benicio del Toro one? It was all right. It wasn't great, but it was all right. Better than The Mummy.
Is that the Gosling one? The Wolfman?
Don't recall. No, Benicio del Toro,
No.
Anthony Hopkins.
The new one that they're working on, because Gosling's working on a Wolfman movie too. Is it that Lee Winnell one?
Yes, that's the Lee Winnell one.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And, because when I think of Ugly Wolfman, I think of Gosling.
I think it'll work.
I can't say that I can judge the Underworld franchise just because I barely made it through the first one. I was kind of bored to tears, but a lot of people really love them, and I do kind of like his entry in the Die Hard franchise. So, yeah, I'd say go for it. Yeah, Lee Winnell. Why not?
Mhm.
I mean, no, that's Lee Winnell. Never mind. I'm thinking of dude from the Underworld. This is guy from Upgrade and
Yes.
actually wrote Saw. Never
Yeah.
mind. I'm confusing names. I apologize.
Like our one of our encyclopedias of movies over here is getting his names mixed up. Well, I think I need to retire now.
By the way,
It's
have you ever
okay.
seen that movie Cooties that he did?
I still want to see Cooties just
It's entertaining.
mainly because I like Elijah Wood too.
Yeah, my favorite movie of his. I know that I did really like The Invisible Man. I still really dig Upgrade.
Yep.
I think Upgrade is every movie that he makes, he's going to have to top Upgrade in my opinion. But
He needs
whatever.
to upgrade every time.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
pitch to play Renfield,
RoboCop.
just because he was mentioned here. Elijah Wood would be an awesome
Oh, yeah.
Renfield. Like that's the type of actor I would want in this type of movie. If
Well,
we need a lead,
he's a dude that likes to take chances with things. So I mean, look at his version of Maniac.
Yeah.
It's just a weird movie and a really interesting movie. If you haven't seen Maniac, check out Maniac and watch the original one too. But watch this one because Joe Spinell is great in the original. But Elijah Wood is really interesting. Come to Daddy was kind of a fun little movie, and yeah, rock.
That's my pitch. If you're listening, Universal execs, Elijah Wood, Renfield, cast it, do it. But that's it for news. That was
That's it. Yeah, there's
nothing
else.
Okay,
that's it for news. It was another slower news week. No more casting news for that Spielberg biopic this week. What? Probably next week. We've been covering it pretty much every other week on this damn show. We'll get a casting for frickin' Francis Ford Coppola in that movie. I'm sure at some point.
Yes,
Nicolas Cage has to play him.
Yes.
So there you go.
Why not?
Yeah, but speaking of Mr. Coppola, we're going to be talking about a Coppola movie right now, Apocalypse Now, 1979, Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola's Madman movie. I don't know how he did this, why he did this.
Or why did he show up in this?
He is a crazy person for making this movie, and we will talk about that. So, before we get into like the film itself, I want to touch on our history with this movie, as we always like to do, like our history with Apocalypse Now and how we were introduced to it. Brian, I will start with you because I do know your history of
or lack thereof.
24 hours, 48 hours.
Yesterday, not even 24 hours. Probably not even. Barely 12 hours, 15 hours. Yeah. I picked this up on iTunes a long while ago. It was on sale, and the iTunes version of it is the final cut, but it does provide you with the theatrical as well as the Redux. And I'm like, for $5, how can you turn down one of the great movies that Coppola has put out? Seeing it or not, I know it's history, to an extent. And I'm like, why would I say no to that? It's 4K and all this in its beautifulness on iTunes and whatnot. But yeah, I had probably set on it for a while. And when we started talking about Coppola movies and what we were going to be doing, I was like, good. I finally have a purpose and reason why I need to have it watched. I'm definitely glad I did watch it. It's probably one of those ones where it's because I don't mind a war movie, but they're just not my atypical, like a Western or like a certain like subgenre of film and whatnot. I don't typically do a lot of war movies, but I will certainly say that it was definitely worth the watch.
Oh
yeah. I'll jump into my history, and then we'll jump into Corey's history of all three versions of this movie. I first watched this probably 7-8 years ago. I was still living at my parents' house, and we had a theater room in our basement, and so that's how I watched this for the first time. So a lot of those movies that I watched in that theater room really stuck out to me because it felt like a theatrical setting, even though I was sitting by myself watching all of them. I watched like this and like Platoon and Rambo. So some of these like Vietnam era
Right.
ones that take place in that era, right around the same time. I was trying to catch up on like 70s cinema. And so the first time I watched it, I really didn't know what to expect going into the movie. And I definitely think that is a great way to go in this, because you are kind of set up this is a Vietnam movie. But even watching it this time, I don't really feel like it's fully a Vietnam movie by the end of it. Your last 20, 30 minutes is a very different movie than what you got your first 20 minutes of the movie. And it was even more present watching it this time around. The first time I watched the Redux version, which was more readily available at that time, and then I watched Final Cut this time, which I had never seen. So I've never seen the theatrical version. I know it is the shortest version. It's probably the one to start with, is the shortest version. But I started with the longest version, then went to the medium one. I guess next time I'll have to watch the theatrical version of this movie. But yeah, Corey, you've watched all three versions. I also watched Heart of Darkness, which we will talk about throughout this.
And I've seen Heart of Darkness. I had planned on watching that. I just ran out of time.
It's only 10 hours of Apocalypse Now you watched for this.
And I wanted, but I also wanted to experience other things. I didn't want to overload myself with Apocalypse Now, because I didn't want to end up hating the film by the end of this. And thankfully, by putting some time in between viewings, I don't hate the movie. I still prefer the theatrical cut, which I am the only one currently on this podcast that has seen that version. But I initially saw Apocalypse Now because I used to subscribe to Entertainment Weekly. I used to watch Roger Ebert and Siskel and Ebert, basically, all the time. But there was a greatest movies of the past 25 years issue. And Apocalypse Now, of course, was way at the top, if not at the top. So I started kind of working my way there through the movies that I could get at the library, which a lot of them were available through the library. So my first experience with watching Apocalypse Now was an old VHS copy that I got from the library when I was about 11. I saw this for the first time.
That is a very responsible librarian to let an 11-year-old check out Apocalypse Now.
Oh yeah. Well, I was always checking out, weird older films. They got to know me well there. I haven't been to the library to check stuff out in a very long time, but
granted, when we were 11, we were
there every couple of days.
Granted, when we were 11, they really didn't care what we were checking out or renting from the video stores and whatnot, unless they were behind the curtain where they were required by law not to let us watch them.
Don't go behind those beads. Not just as a child. Just don't go behind those beads. There's no fun to be had back there. There's disappointment and sadness to be found behind those beads.
Says the guy that worked at the video store. Good to know.
Oh, but we didn't have a little beaded section. We just, we had some Misty Monday videos, some, like Spider Babe and stuff like that. But those were parody films that just happened to have excessive amounts of nudity. So I saw this. I have never seen the theatrical version theatrically. I have seen Redux, and that is actually the first time that when they released Redux, I think it played at the West Mall 7, and I went to see that there. I still, at that time, it was cool seeing it on the big screen. I mean, because it is a movie that I think should be seen on the biggest screen possible. It has that thing, that power to it. But once again, out of the three versions, Redux is my least favorite. My friend absolutely adores that version, and I know some other people that do too. A gentleman that you were talking about earlier, Blake, who you just hosted a podcast with, really initially liked the Redux version the best, and now has moved on to theatrical. But I know there are some fans of the Redux version. And then Final Cut, I saw when I got my 4K set. And I think that there are enough differences to say that Final Cut still contains some stuff that I would have cut out, but it shortens it so it's more acceptable. We'll get into a little bit more of that later, but
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So let's kind of jump into. I'll quickly. I mean, we'll get into the plot and then we'll talk about the movie here. So the movie stars Marlon Brando, Martin Sheen, Robert Duvall, 14-year-old Lawrence Fishburne in this movie as well. Martin Sheen plays Willard, who is kind of this he's back from his first tour in Vietnam, and he's this officer that is basically tasked by the government to assassinate Colonel Kurtz, played by Marlon Brando. So he is sent back into the jungle of Vietnam on a mission that only he knows about to basically take out Kurtz, who has gone. They say he's gone insane. He believes himself as a god, a prophet.
He's gone rogue.
Basically, almost a cult leader in aspects of this. A lot of ways we can interpret Brando in this movie. But I mean, that's the plot of the 3 hour long movie, 2.5 hour, 3 hour, 3.5 hour long movie. That's the plot of the movie. Very, very simple plot to the movie. It's not plot heavy, but it is very much like visually and thematically heavy. And I think that's what we'll definitely touch on here. So Brian, since it was your first time, I'll start. What was your thoughts right away of Apocalypse Now?
One thing I have enjoyed about watching a lot of these movies that are very much I was one when this movie came out kind of thing, is seeing all these very well established actors of now, before anybody who knew, or even just, I mean, like for instance, like Martin Sheen. Like I look at Martin Sheen here and I'm like, okay, I picture young Charlie Sheen. And just in age wise, like Robert Duvall is so young and very visceral. Like it's a nice cleanse to see all these basically old guy actors in a young prime version of themselves.
And Harrison Ford too.
Harrison,
super young Harrison Ford.
Well, I mean, look at like Lawrence Fishburne. I had to look him up or whatever, because Lawrence Fishburne is like 18 when he does this and whatnot, to the point where like that very Lawrence Fishburne-esque voice of his, he hasn't even mastered yet.
No,
he is a boy. He is
14.
He literally sounds like his balls haven't dropped.
He's kind of like the dude that lies about his age so he can serve in the military. It just so happens that he lied about his age to get into a movie.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that adds to the realistic aspect of especially like the Vietnam scenes, and I think that's definitely needed for this movie. How young everyone is around Martin Sheen in this movie. They all look like the age of kids that served in Vietnam. I mean, I think Lawrence Fishburne is the one that really stands out now because of we know who he is now. But even then, you look at him, he looks like a kid during this time. And the actions that his character has to show why Vietnam had so much pushback behind it, and like why when soldiers would come back, they would get spit whatever one. Spit on. Spat at, I don't know, by people when they came back. This shows some of the reasons why that happened. And I mean, the fresh faces in this movie are great. Like Martin Sheen, his voice just sounds like Emilio Estevez so much throughout this movie, but he looks like I always thought about, Emilio has the voice of Martin, but the looks went to Charlie.
Right. Well, and it's funny. It's like, when you listen to like, especially like some of the voiceover and stuff like that, like I picture, 50, 60-year-old, Martin Sheen doing the voiceover for all this, whatever, while, the 20, 30 something version of him is on screen. Like that's one thing I like about him is his inflection in his voice really hasn't changed over all these years, to me anyway.
No, not really. I think it's gotten a little older, but the way
the stature of him,
is pretty much the same since then. And like his opening in this movie is like, I love the opening of this movie. I mean, we start off with the bombs going off in this awesome like this orange color behind all of them, and then it fades into Sheen in the is it in his apartment or a hotel, or
it's in a hotel.
In a hotel that he's at, and has this just I think maybe it's hyperbole just say masterclass of acting in this, but Sheen in this opening is fantastic because he's not really acting too much. He is
he's drunk.
He's drunk off his ass. Yeah.
And he actually smashed that. That's real blood. He smashed that mirror with his fist, and the tears are real. And he was just having a nervous breakdown on screen. That's and they were able to capture it. Yeah, it's his performance in this is great. By how that is the only time where you get to see something human from him. That breakdown, because the rest of it, you're kind of, he's supposed to be this vacant thing that you follow, who really has no soul, has no emotion except for his mission. And his mission is the most important thing, leading to what I personally consider the most shocking scene in the film, which is that where they stop the boat. But I mean, the movie has a bunch of shocking scenes, but that moment, and I think you probably know what I'm talking about, the moment where Martin Sheen does a thing.
Just spoilers for Apocalypse Now. We'll get into it.
Does a thing that allows him to continue with his mission, and it's so out of the blue, but makes so much sense for that moment.
Throughout this entire movie, he is a blank slate. He's pretty robotic. He's a single mission. That's my mission. That's it. I have the singular focus. But I love that the movie opens on literally this guy at his most vulnerable state. He could not be any more vulnerable than he is. Completely nude, drunk off his ass, dancing, screaming, yelling, crying, throwing his fist into the mirror.
Essentially on his body, getting some of it into his mouth, but a lot of it just flowing down. It's intense, and it's an intense opening, and that's great because the rest of the movie is kind of slow and meandering. So to have that kind of powerful punch of an opening, it allows you to, I'm shocked, and then it allows you to just sort of flow along that heart of darkness river all the way down until the end. And because the movie does meander, and scenes do not necessarily flow from one to another. It's a bunch of different, you run into some people, and you're with these people for about 15 minutes maybe, and then you go downriver more, and you'll run into another group of people. And the only real person that is through the entire film is Willard. You do have the guys on the boat, but the guys in the boat aren't there for most of it, for all of it. So,
like watching it this time, it really struck me like this feels like a mini series in a way, because it's very segmented. Like you open with him and in the hotel, and then he gets his mission, and then you're set off with a new group of characters after the Harrison Ford introductions of his mission. Then you get a new set of characters, and you get Robert Duvall and the surfing, and then you get a new group and a new group and and it just keeps going throughout this movie. Like you said, every 15-20 minutes you're pretty much set in a new location or a new group of people. Like this feels like if Coppola were to make this movie today, it probably wouldn't be a movie. It'd probably be HBO, Netflix 4-part series.
It would have to be a limited series.
Yeah, that's what it would feel like.
And I don't think, as a filmmaker, Francis Ford Coppola could make that movie today.
No.
I don't think he could make The Godfather. I don't think he could make a lot of his great films. His heart, which is apparent in every frame of this film, just is not there anymore. His heart is with his vineyard, and making movies is a secondary thing for him. And
he leaves that up to the kids now.
And really, when you get right down to it, Hearts of Darkness is essentially a real life retelling of Apocalypse Now. It is of a man that starts off with the best of intentions and slowly goes insane. Until the only thing that matters to him is, we need to complete this movie. This movie needs to be done at some point in time. We just lost Harvey Keitel because he didn't fit. Okay, whatever. Let's go with our first choice. Let's go with our first choice. Let's get Martin Sheen here. Is he available still? Yeah, it would be what do you think the movie would be like if Harvey Keitel would have played Willard?
I think it would have been a completely different movie.
Yeah, because that was the initial actor that was cast. Much like it's weird because it's very similar to the Back to the Future thing. Whereas Back to the Future initially wanted Michael J. Fox, but he wasn't available, so they went with Eric Stoltz. They wanted Martin Sheen, he wasn't available. They went with Harvey Keitel, he didn't work out because his acting style just wasn't.
He's Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, it didn't work, and and then by that point in time, Martin Sheen was available, but.
Yeah, it would have been a very different movie because I feel like Willard would have been I think we would have known him a little more if Keitel would have played him. He would have been more of expressive, more outgoing, more.
You'd see the crazy more.
Explosive, yeah, crazy.
Right.
Whereas Sheen is pretty blank-faced this entire movie. We see him as most vulnerable, and then he's blank. A blank slate the rest of the movie.
Although his crazy is translated very well into basically his precision of getting the job done.
Although I will say this, Harvey Keitel did I don't know if anybody else will get this reference, but Harvey Keitel did get to do his opening of Apocalypse Now in the movie Bad Lieutenant. So where he's just drunk and high and dancing around naked in his apartment. Yeah, so at least he got to do that part.
He got his just desserts in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, this after a while, I had never seen Hearts of Darkness before watching it this time around, and that is a great that is a perfect companion piece to Apocalypse Now. It's maybe like the only way to fully understand this movie, even though you can never probably ever fully understand Apocalypse Now.
Right.
I don't think Coppola even understands the gravity of the movie and what he went through, what Sheen went through, what everybody went through with this movie. But it feels like Willard is probably the closest character Coppola can probably relate to in his career, film wise.
Yeah.
And just everything he went through on this movie, like you said, we just got to finish this damn movie. We'll talk about Brando at the end here. But Brando, paying him $1 million up front, and then Brando's like, F off. I ain't coming down there for 3 weeks if you're going to push it back. I'm not coming down. I'll take your $1 million and get out of here. And then he's like, if Brando can't show up, who am I going to get? I got to get Jack Nicholson or Pacino or De Niro, whoever's available. Then if I can't get Brando, I just need to finish this damn movie.
Well, and then, Brando eventually does show up, and he's about 300 pounds. So they have to get an entirely different wardrobe for him and shoot him in shadow so that, he doesn't look as big as he was. And he also didn't memorize his lines. Yeah. And also hated Dennis Hopper. But that's another story. Yeah. Another question that I want to bring up, and I can't remember if this is focused on in Hearts of Darkness. What do you think this movie would have been if their initial choice for director, John Milius's initial choice for director, George Lucas, would have directed this?
Aliens would have started coming from the sky.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a more straightforward Vietnam War movie.
Yeah.
What I
understand, the Milius script is a lot more. It's more of a satire, and it is a lot more straightforward with an ending. And that was the thing about Apocalypse Now, because part of the way through, Coppola scrapped the ending because the ending didn't make sense with the movie that the straightforward ending that Milius wrote didn't make sense with the movie he was making, but he still didn't know how to end the movie. And so he just kept shooting things. And of course, you don't know how to end a movie, and then all of a sudden, an actor shows up and refuses to memorize lines and just talks about, grocery clerks. That is a great line, by the way. But
it definitely, just Brando's approach to it all, though, almost does kind of make his character seem like insanity is just the normal for him, though.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those movies that is just so damn messy
that it works.
It shouldn't work. It should be impossible that Apocalypse Now works. And even Coppola said that at that point. He's like, I'm making a bad movie. This is going to be a bad movie. There's no way this is going to be good. And yet, it is one of the greats of all time, considered by many to maybe be Coppola's best, even. And
it is, in my opinion, it's between that, and I know that certain other people would disagree, and particularly another person that we know very well, Andy. It's between that and The Conversation for my favorite Coppola movie. But I think The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 are extremely good movies. But they don't have the bravado of Apocalypse Now, nor the restraint of The Conversation. So,
I was thinking too is you're like the film is very messy and it shouldn't work, but it does, and I think that just kind of just goes to show the messiness almost feels like it plays into the insanity. It plays into the fact that war is not. The war is messy.
Especially the war especially the war it's set in.
The Vietnam War was very messy. Like you couldn't. I mean, even if this movie was as precise as Coppola could make it, it's still gonna look messy because of the topics we're talking about and the time frame of which and where we're talking about it happening at. So, I think that's the reason why, as messy as it is, it's a messy that works.
Well, there was like the scene where they're going down the river and they start shooting arrows. There was a lot of improvisation in that movie because the guy that has the arrow through his head through the majority of the rest of the film, that was just a thing he did. And he broke one of the arrows. They filmed him breaking it and putting it in his head like Steve Martin. And so they had to figure out a way of making that continuity work. So he just had to have that for the rest of the time that he was in that movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
It's an interesting film, and the making of the movie is just as interesting as the movie itself.
And we talked before, you guys talked about like making a bad movie. No one sets out to make a bad movie. Everybody's trying to make something great. And obviously Coppola was trying to do that with this. And he even thought he was making a bad movie, like I said, but it just turns out that like all that messiness kind of perfectly reflects what he is trying to do with this movie. I mean, he's making statements about Vietnam. He's making statements about Brando's character, just talking about nonsense at the end of this movie. He's not making any sense of anything. Brando's just talking at the end. But thematically and what he set up throughout the movie, it totally works. Like this movie should just not work, and it totally works. Like the messiness of Vietnam is perfectly expressed throughout this movie, especially in that scene where, they get out of the boat and there's all these lights outside, and Sheen comes across this group of younger soldiers that are just shooting whatever's out there. And he's like, who's your commander? Well, I thought you are. And he just shows up. Like he just showed up. Obviously he's not their commander, not the one in charge. They're just out there. They have no purpose out there anywhere. They're just out there shooting whatever they can. And that's what this entire movie feels like. They're out in the jungle shooting whatever they can with a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And like you both mentioned, the chaos aspect of it is, I don't think that you would have as great of a film if the production wasn't that messy, because it was a bunch of people just going for whatever and trying to see if things worked, and hopefully, quote unquote, to use the old adage, we'll fix it in post. It's like, we'll shoot this thing, and hopefully when we get to the end of all of this, all of it will make sense and we can cut it together. And that's the hilarious thing about like the differences between the theatrical version and like Redux is, and it shows how things just flow from one thing to another. Like the surfing scene where they're surfing on the back of the boat. In the Redux version is like a good 20 to 30 minutes later in the film than it is in the theatrical version. It's placed in a completely different order, but it still makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And all you need to do is just have scenes of Willard going through the dossier to kind of link things together. You could put this movie in almost that middle portion, you could put that in almost any order and it would still make as much sense because of how just the movie flows. But yeah,
it's the definitive movie of we'll fix it in post, because it's all the connective tissue of the plot that is just Martin Sheen's voiceover.
Yep.
And that's all it is his voiceover connecting us from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, which I find fascinating. You could have a completely different story by different voiceovers throughout this movie. Which,
it's funny, and I may be completely and utterly wrong, but that's not Martin Sheen's voice. That's his brother's voice. They couldn't, if I remember correctly, they could not get Martin Sheen back to do voiceover for it. So that's actually Martin Sheen's brother. Joe Estevez, I think.
All the Estevez family has the same voice, I guess. It could have had Emilio do it for all we frickin' know.
Right? Yeah. So it's a movie that shouldn't work at all. But the fact is not only does it work, it works brilliantly.
I just want to know when at one point am I going to get another Vietnam movie where there's surfing involved?
I don't know. Charlie don't surf.
That's one of the things that did take me a little bit of a back in this here is the whole like surfing aspect of it. Like there's bullets flying around and Robert Duvall is just all like, go surf that wave.
One of my favorite scenes in this movie, and it always, it never ceases to give me like a big chuckle, is after the napalm speech. Because Duvall's crouched there after he's given his little napalm speech, which is much longer than what is normally quoted by people. But, and then he just kind of looks off in the distance. One day this war will end. Couple of beats. He just stands up and walks off. Nothing else is said. And I always, ever since I was a kid, I've laughed my ass off at just how well timed that is. Like, it means nothing, but yet it means everything. Yep. Like, he's important here. Willard is important within the context of this war. But outside of that, they're not important. They have no goal, no job, really. This is what they know, and it's what they're good at. Duvall is good at, and I can't get his character name right off the top of my head, and that makes me feel real bad. But what?
Duvall?
Colonel Kilgore. Awesome.
Kilgore, yes. But this seems to be the one thing that he's lived for in his life. This and, the joy of surfing. And that's it. He's really good at surfing. He's really good at bombing people. You see that wave? It breaks in two directions, man.
Yep. You guys go over, you get that side, you get that side.
Yep.
If you think of like a surfer mentality, though, it's pretty wayward of like, there's not a real goal with surfing. It's you ride the wave until the wave is done and you crash and burn. That's it. You ride the wave until it's gone. That's what the Vietnam War really was. It's just we're riding this wave until, like you said with that line, one day this war will end. That's it. That's the line. That's the line. Like that's surfing. One day this
wave will end.
The wave will end. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing that I always forget every time that, because it's a few years usually. I don't usually watch Apocalypse Now, 3 times essentially in a row. I'll watch it maybe once a
daily watch for you.
No. But every single time I watch it, I think, wow, this is much funnier than I remember it being. Because you remember all the dark things, but you don't remember how over the top a lot of it is. Like the Playboy Bunny scene, which is horrific and funny at the same time.
Right.
Where, they're teasing the guys, and then the guys just rush the stage, and the manager, it's obvious that he knows that this happens every single time, yet they continue to do it because he has plans. He has plans right at that moment of what they're going to do. And I still love the scene of the 2 guys hanging off of the helicopter as it goes up and they drop into the pool. Yeah. This movie, it's not a laugh riot.
Part of me feels that those 2 right there, that I feel that was not scripted.
No.
That just does not feel scripted. That just feels like a couple of guys, especially the one that was hanging from the other one.
Yes.
I feel that the guy on the top was just, the helicopter started taking off. He's like, oh shit, what am I going to do? There's a guy hanging from me who is going to de-pants me.
Yep.
And it's just basically holding on for dear life.
Mm-hmm. And the scenes of the Vietnamese watching through the fence of what's going on, that's always kind of an interesting shot for me too, because it does show how kind of the cultures are different, but it's still, they want to see what these guys do when they're having fun, and if you call that having fun.
I mean, ladies dancing in skimpy clothes is the same in every culture, I think.
Oh yeah,
pretty close. Pretty close.
I mean, that's a lot of this movie though is improv though. There's not really. I mean, there was the John Milius script, but by the end, that's a very loose outline of what the Coppola movie ends up being, and even the Hearts of Darkness, story that Coppola based this off of, is pretty much just the loose plot of Apocalypse Now as well.
Right. Well, and there was a point, and this is another thing where I may be wrong, but because I remember it being mentioned in the commentary track, but there was a point where they started going less off of the script and just specifically for the scenes with Brando, with Kurtz, it was more just, okay, this is going to be like Heart of Darkness. That is what it's going to be. We're using that more than we're using the actual script.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was, if I'm not mistaken, how he was able to convince Brando to either do it or to actually do it the way that he needed to do it. Mm-hmm. But no,
they touch on that in Hearts of Darkness when Brando finally does show up. He shows up. Basically, he has to convince Brando to show up a few weeks later, but he's still only going to be there for 3 weeks. So he tells Brando, he's like, either we have time for you and I to sit down and write out your dialogue, or I put a camera on you and you just talk. And it's pretty much, let's put a camera on Brando, light him how we need to light him, and he can talk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of Brando in this movie, just talking.
Oh yeah.
Nonsense.
And you made reference, Corey, about the fact that, the way he's shot and he's lit and in the shadows and stuff like that is because of what Brando was, looking like at the time and whatnot. But I think that also adds to the weird mystery that is his character. Like I don't want to see him in full light. And, I want to see him, emerging from his darkness, and the way that they shot him, I think just works perfectly for that character. So, it's kind of a happenstance of, we have to do this because otherwise it's not going to work, but now it's going to work even better because of it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's like the Jaws situation all over again. Your shark doesn't work, so we can't show the shark all that much because it looks stupid and it doesn't work. And it made it a better movie. You couldn't show Brando because he was bigger than the character really should have been, living in the jungle. I don't care how many pies they fed him, the natives fed him, he wouldn't be that big. But shooting him in shadows actually made the character work better. Because if you saw him just as a man lit like they've lit the rest of the film, that character would work, yeah, but it doesn't have this mystique to the character that the character needs. Because you need to experience this the way that Willard does. You need to experience this person that he's just heard about. The Jabba the Hutt, if you will, of Apocalypse Now, a character which you just hear about until you finally see them in Return of the Jedi.
And they're much fatter than you would think
right, exactly. And I didn't mean that to make fun of weight or anything like that, but it was like the first thing that I could think of. And
did you just compare Brando to Jabba the Hutt?
It's an entirely different conversation.
I'll make the joke for you, Corey.
What?
I said I'll make the joke for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's an entirely different conversation of why I hate the Jabba the Hutt scene in A New Hope that they added into it. Because I think the character works better when they just talk about him and then you finally see them later on. Yeah. And it'd be like if you saw, if the movie opened with Kurtz giving a monologue, and then all of a sudden, the journey to see Kurtz doesn't have that ramping up thing because what Kurtz looks like. I mean, in this, all you get to see are older pictures of Brando, and ideas of what he did, but not the actual extent of chopping people's heads off and just displaying them wherever. Yeah, it's
there's the shot of when Sheen gets off the boat when they end up where Brando's at, and just Sheen's talking with what's Dennis Hopper's character? Does he have a name?
I'll just refer to him as the photojournalist.
He's Dennis Hopper and the crazy Dennis Hopper. Like when they're talking and meeting each other for the first time, there's just a hanging body behind them. No reference to it. Don't talk about it. It's just in the background of that scene of a hanging body there. Like it's just all that stuff that shows the ruthlessness, how mad Brando has gone. You don't need to even be with Kurtz at that time. Well, you just see the devastation he's done, and you've heard of what he's done. That's scary enough.
Well, and even as you progress and whatnot, and you're getting closer to where Kurtz is at, and there's literally just heads just laying around on the ground, and up the stairs and whatnot, and nobody talks about it like it's an unusual thing. It's just there's a spattering of heads throughout the landscape.
Okay, this is I hate to lead the discussion here, but since you guys both watched Redux and the Final Cut,
I've not done Redux.
Well, yeah, but Casey watched those two.
Yeah.
So you've never experienced the film without the plantation scene.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the plantation scene?
I have, because that's the scene I was talking about when we're talking about scenes that I don't know if we need it. Because I don't know if we need it. Really slows the pacing of the movie down. It's already a slow moving, meandering movie, but that's the most meandering part of it is the plantation stuff. But for like character stuff, I think it also is sort of necessary, but the movie also still works without it, which I feel is this whole movie. Like you can cut out certain stuff that is necessary, but you could also pull it out and say it's unnecessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's how I really feel about the French plantation scene.
Well, and the plantation scene is there are two. That is probably the biggest difference between all the cuts. The plantation scene is not in the theatrical version, and they never meet up again with the Playboy bunnies in the theatrical version. That is just a one and done scene. They were at that weird USO show, and the bunnies take off, and that's the last time you see of them in the theatrical version. Whereas in the final cut and Redux, there's stuff with that, and I actually like that scene. I think that scene it's kind of nice to see a little bit more character development from the other people on the boat. I still don't think the French plantation scene works. It works as its own little mini movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it were an extra feature on a Blu-ray, I think it works. But I think it gives Willard too much personality. It gives him too much humanity. And now, granted, I am a person that saw the theatrical version first, so I think I will probably always like that version. And I know a lot of people, their first experience with it was Redux because it was the version you could buy.
Mm-hmm.
It was the version that they would have on streaming, what have you. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling here. But so you guys,
Brian,
you like the French plantation scene?
I'm mixed on it. Brian, what do you think on it? Like I said, you could take it out, and it's the same. Like you get the same out of it, but you put it in, and I think it does add a layer to Willard. But again, maybe we don't need that. Maybe we don't need that layer to his character.
I have to agree. I mean, yeah, it provides you more in depth on this character or whatnot, but is it depth that is necessary? I'm already watching a 3-hour movie, and if you're talking about an entire 15-20 minutes of additional layers that add to his character but aren't necessary, then is it something you just take out?
Right.
I did feel that it seemed, you're so used to a certain context of characters and people that he's working with, and then all of a sudden we just have this subsection of French people and whatnot. It just, for me, it did feel out of place, and to the point where it's like, I could have gone without it, because
right.
I don't think by the end of the movie, whatever we gleaned off of the character from that aspect of the film, we're even seeing by the end of it anyway.
Well, it's weird because of and I've explained this before. I'm of two minds, because I think that it's a great sequence. I think that it is a great sequence. I just don't know if it is a great sequence that is necessarily needs to be in this movie. And I think, and it's weird listening to the commentary track for Redux, because Francis Ford Coppola, the reason that he did the Redux version is they were going to do a new remaster, and they gave him the ability to add things back in because he watched a bunch of other stuff, that he took a look at some of the things that they were just going to have as special features, and he's like, no, I want to do a different cut of this movie. And I think when he did that cut, he went back and rewatched the original one, and he said it wasn't strange enough, and that with all the stuff added back in, it's become the movie that he always wanted to make. And I think that this is one of the few times where I will disagree on director intent. I actually think that a lot of the stuff he added in makes it a more normal movie.
Yes, that's I have one last thing to say on the plantation scene, because I feel like that's what he kind of put in there to really, really get his point across of what the movies he was going for, what it's about. The two sides to every man. Whereas just the confrontation between Willard and Kurtz is all you need, and the voiceover of Willard comparing himself to Kurtz, and maybe he's not crazy. Maybe we all end up like this. But I think the plantation scene is really just fully expressing the thematic elements that Coppola is going for. It's like you said, it's the audience version of this. It's for the streamlined audience. And like I said, you don't need it, but it's there and it works, but you really don't need it.
And that's the thing is it a case where, I consider the theatrical cut to be a 5-star movie and then I consider Redux to be 2.5? No. I mean, Redux in my mind is still like a full-on like 4.5-star movie. It just isn't quite, in my opinion, isn't quite as good as the theatrical one. But its inclusion does not ruin the film. It doesn't make it unwatchable. Well, maybe because of its length. But, that's neither here nor there. You already know going into it that you're going to be sitting down for a while. So, shut up and eat your checkers.
One thing I like looking up stuff about this movie, and I've seen some people comparing, or not really comparing this movie to anything, but really it's about how many different genres Coppola put in this movie. Because I read interpretations of this, and I found this one fascinating of how Coppola has put it's basically 3 different genres in the 3-act structure of this movie. Like the setup is a Western, where it's this kind of lone gunslinger coming into town, set on this mission, and then and that's it. That's the Western part. And then the middle half is the war movie, where we get to see the aspects of war, the Robert Duvall stuff. That's the war section. And then the movie kind of ends almost like a horror movie in a way, like a cult movie by the end of it. It's a thriller with Brando, where it feels like he is running a cult here. He is a madman gone crazy, and we need to take out the madman. Did you guys feel that at all watching it or looking back at it that way? Like it's a 3-genre film? Because I always felt this has never been a war movie for me. This has always been a multi-genre affair.
I
don't think he was making a war movie. I don't think that was necessary. I think that was Milius's intent. I think he wanted to make his version of like a Catch-22, that satire on how Americans deal with war, but that's not the movie Coppola made. And really, when you get right down to it, it's not exactly the same, but there's enough things in here where I feel comfortable saying, yeah, the ending of the movie is kind of like Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mean, even down to the fact that they kill an animal, like full on just kill a cow right there. Not special effects. It just gets its head chopped off. Right as spoiler alert, Kurtz is also getting chopped.
Are you now comparing Marlon Brando to a big cow, Corey? First you compare him to Jabba the Hutt, now you compare him to a big fat cow.
No, I think I am not using my jumping to conclusions, Matt. I think that Francis Ford Coppola is comparing the death of a cow, the butchering of a cow, to the butchering of Marlon Brando. So I'm not saying it. Francis Ford Coppola is.
Justified or not, Brando was kind of an asshole.
Coppola's luckily the animal laws weren't around like they are nowadays. Again, another reason why you cannot make this movie today.
Well, and the thing is they were killing the cow for a ritual, and they actually had a backup cow. But Francis Ford Coppola was like, no, we don't need to I don't want to kill something for my movie, but they're going to kill it anyway, so I might as well shoot it because it works thematically, which it does. It's a bit it's a weird moment in the movie because the movie itself is very crazy, and I don't think that, especially all the people that complain about the animal death in Cannibal Holocaust, which I do too. I think it's unnecessary. But this movie never gets brought up, and I think that's the reason why. It's more of a documentary thing. These guys were going to kill that cow anyway. you might as well film it.
Yeah.
But it is kind of a shocking thing because, you see it. It's not like one little strike of a knife and that cow's head is gone. No, it takes quite a few to get that cow dead. To make that cow go to the dead place. Ooh.
Brian, what are your
thoughts
on like
Brian.
the Western war movie, horror movie, all kind of into one conglomerate?
I mean, I certainly see that, but I mean, I guess I don't see it necessarily in those particular subgenres because I completely agree. This is a movie that takes place during the war, but it's not necessarily a war movie. Just kind of, in the sake of like, Inglorious Bastards kind of thing. It's in the backdrop of a war, but it's not about the war kind of thing. This is about the people. This is about the crazy that happens with the people because of the war and whatnot. To me, this is more of that psychological, mind warp of a movie kind of thing. Which are movies I enjoy. But I do like the fact that we're playing with different subgenres within this film and whatnot, because then at that point you're using the tropes of a specific subgenre to elevate the aspects of what you're trying to portray at that time. So I think it absolutely works.
Yeah, but I can definitely see the first portion being the Western. Yeah, I do kind of. While it is a war movie and it's commenting on the war movie, the middle portion of it's a war movie of sorts. But yeah, I do see the different genre things. The only reason I'm feeling the need to say that is because I rambled on about Cannibal Holocaust for a while without actually answering Casey's question. So yes, I do see the three genres there. Yeah.
That's okay, Corey. I will take any cannibal Holocaust talk I can get on the show. We don't get it often, but I will take it.
Right.
I swear the only time it ever comes up is with Corey.
Probably.
Well, yeah.
Brian, we should do. I don't know how we could do that. It's a Cannibal Holocaust episode. I don't know.
Is it a movie though that would be entertaining to talk about?
I'm not even entertained watching it, so no, right, probably
exactly. Not. So Casey, you've seen it. Brian, you have not.
No.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wants to say, keep it that way. Unless you are really into like Italian cannibal films or seeing what people consider to be high points of a horror genre, like you feel that as a horror fan you need to see these things, it's completely and utterly unnecessary to see Cannibal Holocaust. There are other Italian horror movies that are better.
Yeah.
At least I know that if I was going to venture down the rabbit hole, at least I can watch it for free because it's on Shudder.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Or you can just, watch the if they still have that version, you can just watch the Joe Bob segments for when he had it on The Last Drive-In and not even have to watch the movie.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah. But
do you guys have any other scenes you want to bring up? I think we touched on a lot of the big ones. Do you guys have any other scenes to bring up?
A couple of things I wanted to bring up. Number one, I did pull up because I was curious and whatnot, and the fact that Corey is correct. Joe Estevez is the narration for Captain Willard. So it absolutely is not, Martin. So obviously all the old man Estevezes of the family sound the same.
Right.
I'm kind of at awe at the fact that we've been talking about this for as long as we have, and we have not brought up the helicopter, the helicopter scene at the very beginning, that the most infamous flight of the Valkyries. Yeah. Because that is, one of the things. I mean, there's different things about this movie that are very synonymous for this movie. Like you said, like the smell of napalm in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Like if anybody, you ever hear of the sake of like the helicopters and whatnot, Flight of the Valkyries is like one of the biggest things that is, I think, thematically that has come out of this. I will say that at that very beginning of the film and whatnot, when they're in the helicopters and whatnot and everything's blowing up, all I pictured was Danny McBride from Tropic Thunder blowing all that stuff up.
Yep.
Some guy on the ground, like, that's dressed up like that, going, all right, let's blow this shit up. But I also want to bring up the fact that there is a very familiar face that is the helicopter pilot during all this here that we don't give any love for here, and that's R. Lee Ermey.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, he has maybe 2 minutes of screen time, something like that. Yeah.
Not a whole lot of screen time, and not the typical, like, this is again one of those ones where you occasionally see like R. Lee Ermey before R. Lee Ermey became synonymous for like Full Metal Jacket. Before he had that, like, he always has to yell his lines of dialogue, where this is just subtle. Hey, I'm ex-military. I know how to fly a helicopter, so put me in the cockpit kind of thing, and he's like the perfect guy to transition from being an ex-military into acting and whatnot. But yeah, it was just fun. Just, you're catching all these young faces all of a sudden, like, hey, I got R. Lee Ermey too. And I feel complete that you have somebody like R. Lee Ermey in this film.
Well, they could only give him like 2 minutes of screen time because they actually had to go take the helicopters and fight an actual war with them. That is nuts. They are using actual helicopters armed for battle, and at points during filming, they would have to leave with the helicopters and go fight.
And because of the script, the American military would not allow Coppola to use any military helicopters, nor show really anything involving the military. So, yeah, they had to go with what they could find, and they just took off one day. Like, I think they had 8, and out of the 8, 5 of them went away.
Yeah,
or something like that. And it's like, oh no, we actually have to go do a thing now. Your movie will have to wait.
Where did they shoot it was like, is it Indonesia? Am I mistaken?
So, or the Philippines? No,
might have been the.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall.
But yeah, they were like, they had heard rumblings of like there's another country's military miles away that could have been a threat, and they had to take off with the helicopters.
And
insane.
The great thing about that scene, and the really sad and dark thing about that scene, is the fact that really the only reason that they go and do that is because of the surfing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, lots of people die because they want to surf that particular area. And then, of course, the scene with the canteen is also really funny, where Robert Duvall makes that big gesture of giving the guy water, and then hears something about something else and just forgets about him the second later.
Mm-hmm. As you see him like trying to like grab for the water.
Yeah. And he actually just ends up dumping out half of it. No, that particular scene, it's a great way to essentially open that movie, because that is the first little bit of the war scene. And I will say this, that is an addition to Apocalypse Now, Redux, and Final Cut that I really think should have been in the theatrical cut, because Robert Duvall does not get an entrance in the theatrical cut. Whereas this, you actually do see him get off a helicopter and everything, and his character is introduced. Whereas in the theatrical cut, he just kind of appears.
He's just
out of nowhere. And I wouldn't mind seeing that scene back in there. But, what am I? I'm not Coppola. I'm not an editor. He makes the movie he wants to make. So if Final Cut is his version of the movie, good on him. Good on you, mate.
Mm-hmm. Let's go into final thoughts then on Apocalypse Now. Yeah, whoever wants to. I mean, I'll start it off since I'm talking and my mouth is open. I'll go with my final thoughts. Yeah, this is just a great movie, and now watching it a couple times, it's like this movie kind of just gets better every time I watch it. because you get something out of it different every time you watch it, and especially if you watch different cuts, you get something different out of it every time. And I think it's just like we've reiterated many times throughout the show. This is a movie that should just not work, but works masterfully. Nothing of this movie should have worked, and it all works great, and makes so much sense of what Coppola was going for, yet he has no idea what he was going for at the time.
Right.
It's fascinating. I mean, we didn't even talk. Martin frickin' Sheen has a heart attack while shooting the damn movie, and they had to shoot around it, and the damn guy comes back to finish the movie. Like, he almost dies while making this movie.
They lie to the studio and the insurance people. It's like, no, he just has the flu. Well, can we talk to him? No, he's real sick. He has the flu. He's we can't replace. He's real sick.
Also, I mean, people say all the time, "Oh, they don't make movies like they used to." Maybe that's a good thing, because Coppola wanted to shoot himself many times while making this movie, and he said that many times to his wife while making, she was making Hearts of Darkness. He's like, he threatened to commit suicide because of this movie. That's how crazy this movie is. And I mean, that's another element to add to this. It's like, I don't want filmmakers to go through that shit to get a great movie like this. I'm glad there is different forms of filmmaking now around, so we don't have to deal with that. And this is one of those great movies that you go through shit and everything like that, and none of it should have worked, but everything works about it. It's a masterful movie.
I think it's brilliant. I think every single version of it, works very well. Like I said, I'm beating a dead horse here. I prefer the theatrical cut. I think it's also the easiest to digest because it's the shortest. But I think that it is a movie that, if you consider yourself a fan of movies, you should see. It's one of the greatest films ever made. And I'm very happy that I can say that, because otherwise all the shit that they went through would have been for nothing.
Yeah, it's one of those. If you're ever to put out a list of essential movies to watch, this is on it. I mean, me and Brian are knocking. I mean, Brian, this is your third one to knock off of essential movies, I would say, because I said Godfather 1 and 2 is essential movies that neither of us have seen before this, and then this is for you. Like, how do you feel now after watching it? Like, essential movie, right?
I definitely think it's an essential movie, but I do also preface that with saying it's the kind of thing where this isn't your movie that you're going to go back and do repeat watches over and over and over again. Like, this is one of those ones where you need to be able to sit down, you need to let it digest, maybe wait a couple of years before you go to revisit it, kind of thing, just because it does have that kind of lasting effect on you. And this isn't a movie to take lightheartedly because of the content of what we're talking about here, the backdrop of war, the verge of insanity, all of that. It's just, it absolutely is a masterful piece of art that we got out of Coppola. But it's also, like you said there, Corey, the theatrical one is the easiest to digest. Is that you need to be able to take this in and experience it and be able to give yourself some time with it too.
Well, you're not going to go wrong with any of the cuts. I have one small question. Have either of you seen The Deer Hunter?
No,
I've not. No.
Okay.
Also on my list of essential movies I should watch.
Yeah.
The problem our list of essentials we've seen is like this, and the ones that we need to see are way out there. Like, I if there's one thing I have learned while doing this podcast is how uneducated I am when it comes to certain films and whatnot. Especially with you and Andy and Blake specifically, like, I have learned a lot, and it just,
Well, you watch what you want to watch, and that's the beauty of it. I don't think anyone should be unless you're doing something like this, I don't think anybody should be forced to watch something that doesn't interest them.
Mhm.
Like you had mentioned before, like the Western genre. I wouldn't force you to watch The Wild Bunch because it's really long and you probably wouldn't like it. Do I think that it is a great film? Yeah. But is it a movie that is for everyone? No. Same with Apocalypse Now.
Mhm.
If you haven't seen it, I mean, I would recommend seeing it, but if you look at it and go, this is not my thing, after we've spoken about it, if people out there listening to this are like, it doesn't sound like my thing, I'm not going to be a jerk and say, no, you must watch it. You must join us at the hierarchy of film commentary. No,
We are the
No,
film master race.
it's a very good movie. It's a masterpiece, but it's not a movie for everybody. So
Right.
don't feel bad if you haven't seen it. Don't feel bad if you haven't seen any movie. Everybody
And-
has those blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let
Well-
anybody tell you that you're less of a film fan, even though I kind of am contradicting myself. You're less of a film fan because you haven't seen certain movies.
Yeah.
I'm a hypocrite, whatever.
That's why me and Brian just use this podcast as an excuse to watch those blind spot movies. It's literally
Right.
what it is.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's one of the best things about us having started doing the miniseries version of it. There's been so many movies I'm like, oh, good, I've never seen that one before. Or really, do we have to do that one? I've already seen that one before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't have to do Alien versus Predator, but god damn it, we did it anyway. Last question. Double feature with Apocalypse Now. What would you double feature with any version of this movie? Keep in mind you have people sitting down for 3 hours at least already.
Oh yeah. I would say there are two different versions, and if you ever want to do like a quote unquote button-umathon thing, like they used to do, I can't remember the name of the theater down in Texas where you'd watch 24 hours of the movie. I'd say watch Apocalypse Now and The Deer Hunter. But what would make an easier to digest version, theatrical cut of Apocalypse Now and Hearts of Darkness, double feature, because you get the crazy of the movie and then you get the crazy of the behind the scenes of the movie. And I know it's real simple and kind of easy for me to do that, but yeah, it's probably the best double feature.
That's the right answer. There's usually a right answer with most of these. That's the right answer.
Or to bring up a certain movie that was brought up during the live podcast, Apocalypse Now, Natural Born Killers.
One of the greatest comedies of the 90s.
Yes.
Imagine what this movie would look like if it was an Oliver Stone movie.
That would be awful. I hate it. Yeah, I love it.
I can sort of picture it because my double feature is an Oliver Stone movie. I'm going to go daddy, son, Vietnam movies. I would go Platoon. I would follow it with Platoon. I would go Platoon last, I think. Yeah, because I mean, Platoon is my favorite war movie. Just because I don't really consider Apocalypse Now a war movie, really. But Platoon is mine, and I think that's one of the best Vietnam movies, one of the best war movies, and I could go with some Martin and Charlie double features.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you I've never seen Platoon either.
Oh, we'll sneak that into a series somehow.
Yeah,
our Charlie Sheen series.
I could do a Charlie Sheen series. Get Major League then.
Oliver Stone series.
Yeah, Oliver Stone, or even for the sake of like war movies, just in general. I mean, there's so much that we could disseminate from that too.
Willem Dafoe series.
Yes,
I will have. I'm gonna spin this a little bit here, just because there is a lot of darkness that comes out of this movie, and I want to be able to leave the theater not feeling like I'm completely at my world's end. Is start going with this and then ending it with Tropic Thunder, just because of the sake of be able to, like I said, you're going in dark and whatnot, you'll be able to at least leave the theater on a happy, funny note. While one thing I always did love about Tropic Thunder is it is a comedy. It's meant to be satire, but they really do take the war the war aspects of it and give you that dark and gritty while still making it funny. And I just think it would pair very well, especially with the sake of all the explosions.
Right. Oh no, and there are full on references to Apocalypse Now in that movie. So that's a great choice. That's a great choice.
Yeah, backup would be Kong Skull Island because that is the Apocalypse Now of monster movies.
What about Casualties of War? Have either of you seen Casualties of War?
No.
Okay, that's another one. Maybe a De Palma series. That's a fun one that you could do. Okay.
We'll talk after, Corey. So that's Apocalypse Now. Go check it out.
Mission Impossible.
Oh God. We'll talk about it after. Let's go to some plugs that we got here. Apocalypse Now is available pretty much wherever you can find streaming, or you can get the 4K version. Which Corey, I do set up all 3 versions on the 4K set.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It's basically listed as the final cut, and the bonuses are the other 2, if I remember correctly.
I don't know if there's a different version of it. Mine is like a 6-disc version of it. It has the 4K version that has both theatrical and Redux, and then the not DVD, but the Blu-ray version. And each disc has a Blu-ray counterpart, except for the special features, which are over 2 regular Blu-rays. And I don't think they've changed it. I think that the Blu-rays that are in there, I don't think they've really done anything other than the final cut. I think it's just
they just repackaged the one from the previous.
Yeah, that came out, 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. But that's okay. It still has a great picture to it. So, and I didn't notice any. Now, granted, I don't have a 4K player, but I didn't notice any drastic differences between the transfer of the final cut and the original transfers of Redux and theatrical. So, a little color timing stuff here and there, but that's going to happen when somebody revisits a movie. So.
All right. So if you like what we're doing and you'd like to subscribe for some more content, you can subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Amazon Music, YouTube to see our faces as well. Our faces are up on the YouTubes right now. Brian, where can they find us on social media?
On the socials, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Backlot605. On Facebook, we also have the South Dakota Film Community Group, where we just like to talk about things and post all sorts of fun stuff and get the conversation going about movies.
And speaking of the South Dakota Film Community Group, it's been a while since that group has met up in person. So you know what? We're going to do so this month, April 28th, Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. We're going to meet up again at Full Circle Book Co-op for the first time in, at least over a year. I think it's been since like 20. I don't even think we went to Full Circle in 2020. I think it's been since 2019.
Yeah, because we went to, what was it? Not Severance, but
it was Severance. A couple times. Yeah. So I think it's almost been 2 years since we've been in Full Circle to do these. We're coming back, guys. April 28th, 8 p.m. Come hang out with us. Let's chat. Let's talk some movies that night. We don't have a theme for it. It's just kind of our first time back, and we'll kind of just get together, chat some movies, and talk about what we have all been watching.
Yeah.
One movie we did talk about today, Corey, you mentioned it, The Conversation. Well, guess what? For our patrons at patreon.com/backlot605, that is the bonus episode you will get on Patreon this month. The Conversation. First time watch for both Brian and myself. We are knocking some Coppolas out that we've not, pretty much his entire filmography that's not Dracula or The Outsiders for us.
Yep.
Very excited to watch that. So patreon.com/backlot605, $5 tiers, you get that. So go check it out there.
And are you going to watch Enemy of the State afterwards?
No.
Okay. Because it's kind of an unofficial sequel to The Conversation.
Is it really?
Yeah. I mean, Gene Hackman's essentially playing the same character in Enemy of the State as he is in The Conversation. So, yeah, I kind of look at them as a nice little
companions.
Sequel that was made many years afterwards.
Special shout out to our patrons, including that guy right below me, Corey Jacobson.
Logan, I give you money.
Why give us money
like that?
I don't know why you do that. I really don't know why any of these people do that, Corey.
Because they love us.
They do.
Support them there, Casey.
And we love them. We love you, Logan, Blake, Andy, Derek, Lou, Mr. Corey Jacobson. You're on this list again, and Darren. Thank you all so much for helping us out, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. I think that's one that's been talked about in our little group of what we should do, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Next week, we're doing The Godfather Part 2, Part 2, and then Part 33 and a third. Right after that, we'll have a bonus episode on the regular feed for Godfather Part 3 as well.
I was kind of wondering if you were going to do that. Are you going to watch both versions of that movie too?
If I have time, I'm going to try to sneak in the new cut of Part 3.
I have not watched it yet, but I know what the differences are, and they just basically changed the beginning and the end, from what I understand. But it's been years since I've seen. It's been years since I've seen Godfather Part 3, so I had to look at videos of because I would not be able to notice changes.
Yeah,
I've seen that movie twice, and it wasn't brilliant either way, but it's not the bad movie people claim it is. It's just a bad follow-up to two masterpieces.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to do it. We're doing a double feature in our house, 2 and 3 back to back. We're ordering Pizza Hut to watch it because we enjoy classy Italian food while watching classy Italian movies. So obviously Pizza Hut is the choice.
Well, yeah, exactly.
No other choice that could be made.
No.
You do know pizza's not classic Italian, right?
Neither is Pizza Hut, Brian. It's the joke. It's the joke of it. God damn it.
I'm just like, pizza, I'm pretty sure is not Italian.
Brian.
Corey.
If you wake up with a horse's head in your bed, it's not me. It's not me at all.
So glad I live on the 3rd floor with a secure building.
I'm a climber.
All right, we got to thank Corey the Climber for coming back on the show. We will have him on before we do Blade Runner, which I don't know when we'll ever do Blade Runner, but we'll have you on before we do another Redux version of any movie.
Right.
Hopefully, we won't make you watch 3 movies next time we have on. We'll just keep it a breezy.
We did not make him do anything. He did that voluntarily.
No, there was no forcing.
I mean, if I ask Corey to come on and there's 3 different versions, I fully expect Corey will watch those 3 versions. Not that I'm telling him to.
Not that we force him, but because
I know
that's what Corey's going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do me. I got to be me.
All right. Thank you so much, Corey. This has been awesome. We'll get you on soon, and we'll talk about maybe this De Palma series we were thinking of. We'll talk about it off here.
Okay.
For Brian Mensing, I'm Casey Kelderman. We will check y'all out next time on the backlot of Sodak.